Hello, it is good to be with you and to be sharing with you again. Hello, it's good to be with you. Glad you can join in. We will start this presentation on stress management and health in about 2 minutes. Again, hello. It's great to have all of you clicking in and joining in on this presentation today. I'm glad to be here with you and to be sharing some more on stress management, and our health. We started this presentation, this series last week, and we talked about understanding stress. And we began to look at what happens when stress is triggered in our body, and just some different reactions, and also how stress affects our health. And so today we're going to continue talking about stress and learning how to manage stress. And so the next thing we're going to talk about is identifying the stressors and beginning to look at some different management options for stress in our lives. So I want to just remind us, I'm sorry, I clicked ahead here. I want to remind us of kind of why we want to talk about stress. You know, one of there's a lot of good reasons why we want to talk about stress, but I thought this was very interesting when I found this article that was in the Vietnam Express International, and it was published back in 2019. And the Ministry of Health was saying that stress is causing mental illnesses among 15% of Vietnam's 95 million people, especially the youth. And when you kind of calculate that number, that 15%, that's over 14 million people in Vietnam that are experiencing um, difficulties because of stress. And the ministry went on to say that mental health disorders related to stress have increased strongly in the recent years. So in this article, this is one place we can see that the Ministry of Health has recognized that stress is causing mental health and other health problems for the Vietnamese in Vietnam. And so this is a topic that really in every nation, every group of people, stress is something for us to understand and to learn how to manage in our lives and to learn how to do that for our health. So we're going to talk about identifying stressors. So as we talk about this, we are talking about things in our life that can cause stress. It's something, a stressor is something that causes a state of strain or tension, pressure. It can be an event or a condition in our life that triggers that stress reaction in our body. We talked last week how that stress reaction happens very naturally, very normal. It's a very normal reaction for us to have. It's what we call the fight or flight reaction. And that's when we perceive something to be a danger to us or a threat to us, and it sends a signal to our brain. And that signal causes there to be hormones or chemicals released from our brain that starts this reaction in our body. It starts to prepare our body, our physical body, to be ready to either fight the danger or to run, to flee from the danger. So our heart will begin to beat faster. Our breathing, instead of it being more slow and calm and deeper, it'll become faster and more shallow. Our digestive system doesn't work as well. Our immune system slows down. Everything begins to focus in on helping our body be ready to fight or to flee. And so our body is in this heightened reaction. And so everything, instead of it being balanced in our body, things are in a heightened reaction, ready to react, ready to fight or to flee. And so that's that stress reaction that happens in our body. And so there are events and there are conditions that can cause that to be triggered for us in our body. And the natural flow is for that stress reaction to happen, and then the danger or the threat to be relieved, to be gone, to be over. And then we go back into a more balanced function in our body. We go back into a more relaxed function. So we have a relaxation response. And so that is the best. That is where the stress happens, and then the danger is over and our body relaxes and becomes normal again. And that is the natural reaction of stress. And that is a stress that is helpful stress. And it's not the stress that damages our body. But what we are also talking about and being aware of is that there is stress that happens, that it creates this stress reaction, but it doesn't go back into a relaxing place. This stress reaction happens and it stays high, and our bodies stay in this heightened function. Instead of being relaxed and functioning in a balanced and normal way, our body functions up here in this heightened reaction. And so that becomes what we call long-term stress or chronic stress. And that's the stress that begins to damage our body. It begins to put our health at risk in different areas. And so we need to understand, what are those stressors that are happening in our lives that cause stress, and to be able to identify these things, so then we can know what to do, how to manage this, how to bring that stress reaction down, and to have more of a balanced and relaxed condition in our body again. So today we're going to talk about types of stressors, and we're going to talk about how to identify our stressors. And then we're going to talk about types of stress management options. We're going to begin to talk about that today. So first, let's talk about what can trigger stress. There's some big main categories that we can look at. The first are things at work. There can be things at work that trigger stress for us. There can be things at home and just in life outside of work. It could be things at home. It could be things with people in the community. And so it can be things at work, things at home, and in life. And then there are some other areas, there are some other things for us to recognize that can trigger stress. One is unrealistic expectations. Two is fear and uncertainty that we may have. Three is our attitudes and our perceptions, the way we think about things, the thoughts we have. And then number four is change. Now, change, one thing to know about change is that not all change is bad. Some change is really good in our life. And at the same time, good change or bad change can trigger stress for us, because we're having to readjust our life to something new. And so it can take extra energy. We can be sad because we're leaving behind maybe some old friends or old ways of doing things. That change can trigger a level of stress in our lives. Now let's look at a few specifics in these areas, just to have some examples to understand, well, what kind of stress, what kind of situations, what kind of events could actually be causing stress. So let's look at work stress. Actually, work stress in America is probably one of the main areas where people experience stress. And probably in a lot of other countries, it may be very similar. But because we give so much of our time to work, and there's so much of of what we do that is centered around work and around our careers, our occupation, that there can be a lot of things that can trigger stress through our work. And this is just a short list to just think about some ideas. So, some things that could cause stress for us in our work could be deadlines that we are given and the workload that we have, whatever we've been assigned, and um, expectations and things that we need to accomplish, um, different projects we may need to do, just the workload that we have. Then there could be problems with coworkers. There could be relationship problems. There could be communication problems, working difficulties, conflict between us and coworkers. And there can be difficulty with other types of relationships at work. It could be with a supervisor, or it could be with an employee, or it could be with a customer. There can be different there can be difficulties in different types of relationships at work. There can be some task that we do that maybe we don't feel completely confident in, like maybe giving speeches. Maybe that's something that could make you uncomfortable or nervous or produce fear in you. And there may be other tasks at work that you feel a little insecure with. You're not too sure if you perform as well as you should. If you work long hours, and especially if you work long hours several days a week, or you do that several times in a month, those extra hours of working can just make you more tired and can just put more stress on your body. And it can cause maybe some difficulties at home because you're having to work longer hours. And then the last one on this list is just when things are not very clear at work. Maybe the task you're to do, or the expectations that your supervisor has. Maybe it's not real clear to you, so you're not real sure if you're performing to the level that they want. So these are just some examples of some of the situations, some of the events at work that could cause stress. Now, another thing just to think about is that we can learn to operate under stress or in certain situations, and we don't always recognize how it's affecting us. Stress isn't always easy for us to recognize, because we get used to certain things. We get used to a certain schedule. We get used to the flow of how things are going, and we feel like we've adjusted, and we just keep going. We just keep moving forward. But we're not always realizing that there's stress that's starting to build in our life, that over time that this is producing a higher level of stress, because we're not really learning how to get the pressure off of us. We're not learning how to have those times of just relaxation. And we're under this constant hum, I would say, this constant place of pressure being put on us by different things at work or home. And over time, that can start to cause problems. And so being able to look at a list like this work stress, and to look at this list, and I have a few other lists we're going to look at, that can help us begin to think, maybe I need to make some changes, or I need to realize that there is stress in my life. And so it's important to become aware of what can cause stress so that we can recognize that there is stress in our life and we can develop ways to manage that stress so it doesn't affect our health. And we are more able to work at a better efficiency and just to live our day-to-day life just in a better place, feeling better and feeling healthier. In the last session last week, we talked about the frog in the pot of water. And that frog, the story, it's a story, and in that story, the frog is put in a pot of water, and the water is just normal temperature. And so the frog doesn't think there's anything wrong with this water. And so the frog will stay in this pot of water. But this pot of water is on a burner that is slowly heating that water up. It's slowly making that water get hotter and hotter and hotter. But the frog, he's been in the water from the beginning, and he is, because it's just slowly heating up, he gets used to that water. He adapts to the heat of that water, and he doesn't he's not aware of how hot the water is really getting. And so the frog will not jump out of the pot. The frog will stay in that pot of water, and he stays in that pot of water till that water is boiling, and then he's boiled in the water. So we don't want to be that. We don't want to be a frog in a pot of water that gets boiled by the water. And that's what can happen with stress. Stress can be slowly heating up in our life, and we've not recognized what's happening. We've not recognized the potential of the stress that we are in. And we just keep staying in the situation, doing everything the way we usually do it, and that stress is getting hotter and hotter. The pressure is getting hotter and hotter, and eventually it will affect our health. Eventually it will cause us to not have the energy that we used to have. It can affect our emotions. It can affect our physical health. It can affect our relationships, because that pressure just keeps getting hotter and hotter, and we're not doing anything to get out of that pressure. And that's a good question. Lua Chan says, what is the difference between stress and pressure? Well, I think in this conversation, I really use the two together, because I think the word pressure gives a good image, gives us a good understanding of stress. And the pressure, it's a negative pressure. It's a pressure. Stress can feel like pressure. Stress can feel like something that's just pushing down on you, like it's a pressure on your life. And so I use them together when I talk about stress, because I think for many people, the word pressure, they understand that word better. And so for our talking together, I say stress and pressure, I use them together as the same. Now let's talk about stress at home. and stress in our life. And in this picture, I don't know if you can see it too well, but we have the lady in the middle, and on one side, she's thinking about all of the dirty dishes she needs to wash. On the other side are probably her two children, and they're having an argument. And so there are definitely pressures, stress that we can have at home. And we can have just in our life in general. Driving through the traffic in Hanoi, that can produce stress or pressure on us. And that's just a life event, something we do. It's just part of life when you drive your motorbike through Hanoi. But there are some other things for us to think about. The death of a loved one, um, a divorce, or having problems in marriage. Um, and then just responsibilities that we have with our family, or at home. It can be just normal things, like the washing of the dishes, taking the children to school, and managing their activities, or cleaning the house, or buying the food, cooking the meals, repairing the house if something is wrong, just different responsibilities that we have. Um, and over time, those they can be part of producing pressure or stress for us. The loss of a job or financial problems, even moving to a new home. Again, that can be very exciting and positive. And because it's a change, there's going to be extra things that we have to do to move to that new home. And there's going to be adjustments we have to make. And that can produce a pressure on us. That can increase the stress or the strain on us. And then relationship problems with our family or with friends, when there's conflict or misunderstandings. And then just personal emotional problems we may go through. If we experience depression, being very extremely sad or anxious or angry, or a lot of fear or guilt about something, those kind of things can create stress or pressure in our life. And so understanding that as we are experiencing these things, that they can produce a pressure, they can produce a stress for us. And so ignoring that is not going to help us, but we want to be able to recognize what we're experiencing and find a way to manage it. Find a way to have to relieve the pressure, to take some of that pressure off, and to have times of relaxation, times of refueling ourselves and building ourselves up. Because many of these things, they take energy out of us. And that also makes us less able to deal positively with the stress or the pressure of these situations. And so we want to find ways to take the pressure off. We want to find ways to relax. We want to find ways to refuel ourselves. It's like unplugging and just kind of being able to just relax for a short time, even just to refuel ourselves, to gain energy, to be able to tackle these problems again, to tackle these situations again. Now, some of the other stressors, some of the other things that can produce stress for us, our pressure in our life, is unrealistic expectations. That's where we want to do something or achieve something, and it's a good idea, but it may not be realistic. Having too much to do and not enough time to do it. That can be one of those times that our expectations are unrealistic. And we may have trouble knowing how to say no to something, even when we don't have time to do it. And that's when that's unrealistic, to think, oh, I can add something else to my schedule, and to realize you don't have time to add something else to your schedule. So that would be unrealistic, to have your schedule full of many activities, and then to think, oh, I want to add one more. And already your schedule is so full, you don't know how to get everything done. So that would be an example of unrealistic expectations. Now, let me go through some of these things, and there's some great questions here. Thank you. And we will talk about some of this. Yes, thank you. Now let's go to the other stressor, fear and uncertainties. There can be certain things in our life that can produce, it produces fear, or we're uncertain. And that can cause our mind to be filled with worry, because maybe we're thinking the worst case scenario. We're thinking the worst will happen in a situation. And so that can be an example of having fear or uncertainty. And that produces a stress, that produces a pressure in us, that fear, that uncertainty. Now, the next area are attitudes and perceptions. And this has to do with how we think about things. So an example would be, maybe something didn't go the way you wanted it to go. You didn't get the result that you wanted to get. And so maybe you get upset and you think the worst thing about that situation. You see all of the negatives, and you see no positives in it. Let's say a job interview. Let's say you went for a job interview, and in that job interview you said, oh, I didn't do well, and they didn't hire me. And so now you're thinking, I will never get a good job. I did horrible. I will never be able to do a good job interview, and I will never get a good job. Well, that's an attitude, that's a perception, that's a thought that you have, and it's a negative, it's on the negative side. And that can produce stress. Now we can take that and we can say, you know what? Let's see what's on the positive side of that thought. Let's change our attitude, and let's realize this job interview, I can learn from it. I didn't do as well as I wanted to, but I can learn from this, and I can have another job interview, and I will get a job and I will be able to get better and better jobs in my life, and I'll keep learning and I'll keep trying. And so that kind of thinking, that attitude, that perception, that's more positive. And that gives more strength to you, and it takes that negative pressure off of you. And so that changes the pressure or the stress that you feel. And then the last area is change. Anything that causes us to have to adjust and to do things differently, that's going to take energy, and that's going to take time, and there's going to be pressure that we will feel, stress that we will feel as we are going through that change. Even when the change is positive, it will still create a level of stress, a level of pressure, because you're having to adjust to new things. Now, I want us to stop and I want you to think for just a minute. We're going to take about a minute here for you to think about this. So let's go back and let's look at what we've just talked about. So we've talked about work stress, and we have the list of some examples of what could be causing work stress. We talk about stress at home and in life, and some examples of what could cause that. And then we talk about the other stressors, unrealistic expectations, having fear or uncertainty about things, our attitude or our perception, our thoughts, and then change, experiencing a change in our life. So I want you to think about what are your top 3 stressors? What are your top 3 stressors? Or maybe what is the one stressor that you know that you have? Is it something at home? Is it something at work? Is it an unrealistic expectation? Is it a change? Is it a fear? Is it your attitude about something? Or maybe something else? But I want us to take about a minute to just think about it. And if you can just pop something into the chat, that'd be great. I'd love to see what you're thinking and what's coming to your mind as things that you would say, this is a stressor in my life right now. Okay. I was also looking at some of the things in the chat box here, and these are some great kind of comments and questions. And so as some of you are thinking about stress in your life, I had Chungbo said how to no longer stress with work pressure and some things in daily life, such as children, housework, money. And that's as we go on in our presentation, I'm going to talk about some things. And one thing to realize is that there is not like one solution for every person, but there are different options. And so for you to begin to say, I have stress with work pressure, and I have stress with my daily life, with my responsibilities with my children, the housework, and money. I know that it puts pressure and stress in my life. That is very important that you can identify that, and then we are going to look at some things some options that can help us. We will not come to a place where there is no stress in our life, but we can learn some habits and some techniques that help us to manage stress more effectively and makes our life better. It makes us enjoy our life more. So I hope that as we go through that there'll be some things that you will see. And Kim Lynn, the symptoms of stress. We will talk about that again. We did talk about it some in the first session, and we will talk about it again in this session. Some of the symptoms to help you identify stress. And yes, and you also said sometimes I feel tired and I have a headache. Those are some symptoms. Those are some physical symptoms in our body that can be symptoms of stress. Yes. And Hung Tu Huyen, I drink energy drinks to manage stress, and after that I feel depressed. So what's the best nutrition to deal with stress? We are going to be talking about nutrition, healthy eating, exercise, sleep. Those are three big areas in a healthy lifestyle, and nutrition is a big area. And even though caffeine, can help give us some energy, if we have, it can also cause us to crash. It can cause our mood to go down, and it can cause us to not be able to deal with stress the best. And so we will talk about some healthy nutrition. We will talk about that. It's not just one thing to drink or eat, but it's some different. It's many things put together for a healthy nutrition. And I think there is another message here that I need to get to. And I see some of you, yes, some of you have put down, yes, an unrealistic expectation. Yes, that's good. Yes. For me, I know right now in my life, change. I've gone through some different things of change since I have been back in the US. And I've some of that change is good, some of that change is unexpected, and sometimes that produces pressure and stress. And I've had to really be aware of that in my life. Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and move forward. And whoops. So here is the next slide, and we are going to talk about the symptoms. So now there are many different symptoms, but these are some symptoms. These are some things to help you begin to identify symptoms of stress. This isn't all of them, but this is to give you a place to begin to learn about this. And understanding the symptoms makes us aware of stress in our life, and that's the first key to us being able to change and to get help. So physically, there are some symptoms that stress can cause. It can cause headaches. It can cause different body pains, different body aches. It can cause low energy. It can cause stomach problems. It can cause some sleep problems where you're not sleeping as well. So those are some examples of some physical symptoms of stress. There can be emotional symptoms of stress, where we have low confidence. We don't have a lot of confidence in ourselves. We feel more depressed or sad. We're fearful. We're anxious. We can also have anger. It can, because of the stress and the pressure, it can cause us to be more irritable, more angry. We get angry more easily. We get irritated more easily. And then mental function. We may have constant thoughts of worry, like our mind just goes over and over and over with these thoughts of worry. We may find that the pressure of the stress, we don't think as clear. We may forget some things. It may be harder for us to make decisions, and our thinking, we may have a lot more negative thoughts than what we usually do. It's like we see everything more negative, and that can be a symptom of stress, of having that stress or that pressure just pushing down on us. So as we understand this, then we can begin to put some of these pieces together. And so this is a tool that you can use. It's a way to begin to put some of these pieces together and maybe help you see the picture of what's happening. So this is where you would write down, maybe for a week, maybe for 3 days, maybe for a month. That might be a little hard, but you would take time, let's say maybe 3 days out of the week. You would take time to think about what kind of stress have I had, and to write it down and to answer these questions. So one, you would identify what is the stressor, what is the event. And then you would write down how it has affected you. And then what kind of stress is this? What type of stress is this? So let's look at our example. Let's say my stressor, the thing that's causing stress, is I have a presentation at work that I have to do. And how is this affecting me? Well, physically, I'm sleeping less. I'm not able to sleep as well. Emotionally, I'm very nervous. And mentally, I have a lot of thoughts of worry. I'm worrying about if people will like it. Maybe I'm even worrying about, will I get it done in time? And what's the type of stress? Well, it's work stress because there's the pressure of the deadline. But also the other type of stress is fear. I have a fear about speaking in front of people. So it's 2 different types of stress for me. It's the pressure of the deadline, and that this is a work project and my performance, and so it's that kind of pressure. But then it's also the fear of speaking in front of people. So now that we understand a little bit more about our stress, we've identified it, we understand it a little bit more, then now we want to look at, how do I change this? How do I manage this? How do I get this pressure off of me? How do I deal with this stress? So we want to look at stress management. So as we look at stress management, there's 4 things I want us to think about. Number 1, I want us to think about that, that we're looking at techniques to help decrease or even prevent stress. And then number 2, we're looking at techniques to manage the stress reaction. Techniques that will help us be able to be more relaxed, that will help get the pressure off of us, that will help us regain energy. And stress management, as we use these different techniques to manage our stress, it's going to protect our health, and it's going to improve our day-to-day function and our day-to-day life. So let's take a look at stress management. And before we look at some specific things, I want to stop again and I want to ask you, what have you tried? Some of you may have tried some things. You may have felt like they worked well, or some they may not work well. But what have you tried? And if you want to put something in the chat box, that's great. And just to let you know, as we come to the end today, we're going to do one or two kind of relaxation exercises together. That may, I think that'll be helpful also as we end today. Okay, I see some comments here. Oh, Ming Tui Lei. Well, thank you. You find my voice very therapeutic. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And Chung Bo, yes, it's difficult to have with the current situations. It's difficult to have a stable job, and there's many difficulties in life. Yeah, so stress is inevitable and we have to accept it and to deal with it. Yes, yes. So when you practice yoga, yes, that is one of the techniques that one of the yes, Kunding, you think more positive. So thinking your mind, changing your thoughts, your attitudes, your perception, thinking more positive. Okay, great, great, great. Well, let's go ahead and continue forward. Thank you for the comments. I appreciate just hearing what you're thinking. I appreciate that. So let's talk about stress management. And I'm going to talk about these in stage 1 and stage 2. So management stage 1, this is a stage where we can prevent or reduce stress. Now, we can't prevent all stress, but we can do some things that will prevent some stress. If we learn the warning signs that stress is ahead, if we understand that there are certain things that's going to increase stress in our life, then we can learn how to avoid certain things, certain habits, certain situations, certain ways of thinking, and we can learn to develop habits. We can learn to develop ways of thinking that are going to help prevent or reduce our stress. And there's 3 main categories that we're going to look at. Now, next week, we're going to go into more detail about these different management options. But these are the 3 main categories that we can use to help prevent or to reduce the level of stress in our life. And that's our lifestyle, healthy eating, exercise, sleep. Those are 3 main areas in our lifestyle that when we learn how to live in a healthy way, it can greatly impact our stress. It can help our stress. The second area is how we manage our time and preparation. Managing time and preparation. That's another area. And then the last one is making time for fun and for relationships. Making time for fun and for relationships. So these are three main areas that we will look at in more detail next week. But these are in stage 1 to help prevent or reduce stress in our life. Now, in management stage 2, this is we are talking about ways to engage relaxation. So we can't prevent all stress. You know, just like one of our participants here, you know, talked about how stress is inevitable, and it is. There is going to always be some type of stress in life. We can't stop all stress. And negative stress will come to all of us. So this is where there are these kind of techniques will help us learn ways to engage the relaxation response and to help decrease the negative effect of stress. So again, there's three main areas that we will look at. We will look at relaxation techniques, and like one of the it was Tu Huynh says they practice yoga. Well, that's one of the relaxation techniques. We will look at attitude and perceptions, our thoughts, how to think more positive. That's one of the techniques that we'll look at. And then we'll also look at the idea of fun, how to incorporate fun and to enjoy life. And then also how to use support, finding support and using the support of others. So again, next week we will talk in more detail about these different areas of stress management. Let me go ahead and let's do one of these scenarios. So let's look at scenario number 1. Let's say I have 3 work or school projects that are due in the same week. So that is my stressor. That is what's causing pressure on me right now, is I have 3 work, or it could be school projects that are due in the same week. So this pressure, it can help keep me motivated and focused. That could be good stress. We talked last week that there is good stress. But this pressure can also be negative if I start feeling overwhelmed and worried. So to prevent the negative stress, I schedule how I will complete the projects. I schedule specific days and times and steps to complete each project. And then by managing my time and scheduling the steps to complete the projects, I can complete each one on time, and I avoid the negative pressure or the negative stress. So this is this is an example of someone using a stage 1 management, stress management, which is managing our time. In this scenario, this person scheduled out how they were going to complete each project, and they put that into their schedule, when they were going to do it, what they were going to do, so that it would be completed, they would all be completed on time. And by scheduling it, it took that negative pressure off of them, because they could see, I can do this, and this is how I will do this. So that would be a scenario of actually preventing negative stress, preventing that negative pressure. Now let's move forward. And I want to come to this. So I want to come back to this tool of where we identify our stressors and we add management options. So as we identify our stressors and we understand how it affects us, and we understand the type of stress that we're experiencing, then that can help us identify what kind of stress management do we want to use. And so in this scenario, again, we have a presentation at work that I have to do. You know, it's causing me to sleep less. I'm nervous. I'm having thoughts of worry about if people are going to like this. Am I going to get it done on time? And I recognize that it's work, it's pressure from work because it's the deadline, but also it's pressure from my own fear because I have a fear about speaking in front of people. And so then I come over here and I think, well, what kind of stress management do I want to use? So, stage one, I'm going to schedule the steps to complete the project. And then I'm going to make sure I have time to practice the presentation. So that helps take some of that pressure of that deadline off of me because I'm going to schedule it. I'm going to schedule it into my time, and then I'm also going to practice it. But now I still have to deal with, there's still some pressure and stress the day I'm going to present because I have this fear of being in front of people. So practicing the presentation, that's going to help reduce that pressure, that stress, but I still need to find some ways to relax because there's still some pressure there. There's still some stress because of that fear. So let's say I decide before giving the presentation, I'm going to take some deep breaths just to kind of help calm me. I'm going to take some deep breaths in and breathe out. Then I'm going to also, in the presentation, I'm going to have a note that I'm going to put something on my notes where I have a saying that's going to inspire me and encourage me. Maybe like, I can do this. And I'm going to have that with my notes so I can see it. And so that will encourage me. And then also, I'm going to take a sip of water so that I can pause and I can refocus and I can take a deep breath if I start feeling nervous in the middle of my presentation. So, you know, those are just some ideas, but that's a way to understand how to bring all of this together and how to use stress management options to begin to solve the stress, to begin to manage the stress in our lives, and to have some positive outcomes from managing it effectively. And next week, we'll go into more details. We'll have more examples and we'll talk in more detail and hopefully practice some things together too. So next week, we will talk about specific stress management options and practice it. And then in the last week together, our fourth session, we're going to create a stress management plan. We're going to talk about how to create a stress management plan. Now I have some, I want to look at this. Oh, thank you. I see some are saying, Yes, one person, Tuan Lei, says, stay away from stress makers and try to look at things from both sides. Very good idea. Very good idea. And Hatui, I think this topic is so useful and we should have had, okay. So you're really good. I'm glad you're finding it useful. Would like to have more. And you're right. We are living under many pressures. I think today in many places, people are experiencing many pressures. And I know in Vietnam, there's a lot of pressures too. David Wu, thank you for your presentation. Yes, how to keep balance, some stresses when income is low while real life cost is high. Okay, yeah, I think, next week, I think there are some things that we will discuss that maybe can be more specific and yes, there are some problems that are not easy to solve. And at the same time, being able to learn how to manage that pressure and that stress can be so helpful for us. It can help us think more clearly so that we can solve problems more effectively. And we can look at the problems and think more clearly. If we can manage the stress, it can even help our mental function so that we think more clearly and we can see the different options that we have. Real quick, let's do a review, and then I want to do at least one of our stress relieving relaxation exercises. So in Vietnam, mental disorders related to stress have strongly increased in the recent years. And I think even this year, 2020, we can say it has increased even more. A stressor is something that causes strain or tension, or we could also say pressure. A stressor is an event or a condition that causes the stress reaction. Stressors can include things at work, things at home, unrealistic expectations, fear and uncertainty, attitudes and perceptions, and change in our lives. Stress management can do 4 things. It can prevent or reduce stress. It can help us to engage the stress. It can decrease the stress reaction. It can improve our health, and it can improve our day-to-day life. Management stage 1 includes healthy eating, exercise, and sleep. Time management and preparation, and making time for fun and relationships. Management stage 2 includes relaxation techniques, attitudes and perception, and fun and support. I want us to do just about 3.5 minutes of relaxation. It's going to be some simple stretches. And basically, it relieves the tension from our shoulders and our neck area. That's one of the things that stress will do, is it'll cause our muscles to tense up and to hold that tension. And so being able to do simple stretches and to relieve that tension from our muscles can give us just a feeling of relaxation in our bodies. Now, if you have some physical problems like in your neck or your upper back, your shoulders, You know, you may not want to do these stretches if you think it's going to cause something, if you think it'll cause the problem to be worse. And another thing to know about stretches is you do not push the stretch to a point where you feel pain. You just feel a stretch in your muscles, but not pain. So this is just a quick video of me leading you in some simple stretches, and we will do this and then talk again when this is complete. I need to ask, I don't know if you heard the music with that. I may need to change something in how I have shared this. Let me check real quick and see if I have this shared the proper way for you to hear it. Let me do this. Share again. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready.
Hi, this is Cynthia with you, and I want to just go through a few stretches that can help relieve tension and stress in our bodies, specifically around our shoulder area and kind of our neck area. So first, let's take an arm. This is my left arm, and I'm going to put it back here and stretch it. Then I'm going to take my right hand, and I'm just going to gently just pull on my arm and just feel a stretch through my shoulder and my back. And then I'm just going to relieve that. Then I'm going to take the next arm, my right arm, and do the same, and just stretch it. And just feel that a little bit of tension just into my shoulders, and now I'm just going to release it. Just kind of relax that, roll your shoulders a little bit. Then take your left arm, put it across your body. Take your right hand and just kind of gently push that arm closer into your body to create more of a stretch across your back. And you can turn your head. And then do it on the next one. Okay, and then just kind of let that relax a little bit. And then I can take my arms and put them to my back and make a fist. So I'm holding them like this in my back and just kind of stretching through my back, my shoulders. Just let that stretch and then just release that. And then just simply putting your arms out, straight out, and turning your neck and just turning it a little bit more than what you normally would to feel a little bit of a stretch in your neck. Come back center. Now go to the next side and just feel that stretch in your neck area. And come back center. Let's do it again. Come back center. And then come back. And then it's always just kind of nice to maybe take your hands and just to do a little bit of a massage up your neck and into your shoulder area. Feel a little bit of a relaxation as you're massaging that area into your neck, up to your scalp. the lower part of your scalp area, down your neck to your shoulders. And then just kind of relax your arms, just roll your shoulders, just to allow them to relax. And that's it.
Well, I hope that that helped you feel a little bit more relaxed. I know after I do some simple stretches, I usually just feel, just that tension just out of that part of my body, and it just gives just a sense of relaxation. And so that's one of the simple techniques, and we'll be looking at more next week. And I'm glad you were able to join, and we have more to talk about next week, and to try to tackle this subject of stress and learning how to manage that in our lives, and so that it protects our health, and it also just gives us a better sense of well-being, enjoying life even more, even when there are pressures, learning how to still enjoy life. So I'm glad you could join, and it was great to see your comments, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.